If I had one more day, I would write a love poem composed of one word,
repeated like binary code. I'll multiply it by the number of days that passed without saying it to you.
And I will add the days when I said it with no words because I want to say it more.
And like a bee gathering pollen, I'll collect everything ever said in one word, like a square root multiplied by the power of 10.
I count even that day when my anger at you or for you turned me into a stone. And also the days when I was away sending my songs like postcards to the lonely, feeling you in every touch of love I gave to the world.
I'll count all my days, even the 9 months of days before I was born, to say this exponential, growing, I love you.
If I had one more day, I would write a love poem. I would write only about love, speak only about love, act only with love. This exponential growing that our guest poet, Junia Mikel, writes about is what we did this year together. Welcome to the Vanguard. The dictionary defines Vanguard as a group of people leading the way in new developments or ideas. Indeed, that is who we are at Women Forward International, and we are part of a larger group of people out there who are choosing to live according to a new law, the law of the heart, the one that makes you break with bureaucracy and codes that no longer serve or ring true to this time and place in which we know that we are all one human family. Today, we will share Women Forward's mission to bridge mind and heart through collaborative partnerships between academic institutions and organizations to advance women. We will weave into our discussions some of the ways this new law is at play and how the arts brings about this process. Her Excellency Sheikha Al-Mayasa bint Hamid bin Khalifa Al Thani, the chairperson of Qatar Museums, Doha Film Institute, Reach Out to Asia, and Qatar Leadership Center, will keynote our event because, in her words, I quote, "People have said, let's build bridges, and frankly, I want to do more than that. I would like to break the walls of ignorance between East and West. Today, let us break the walls of ignorance between East and West, between woman and man, between poor and rich, between so-called high and low, between mind and heart. Is there any other way to move forward?" We thank the Embassy of the State of Qatar for their unwavering support of Women Forward International and our mission to advance women by bringing forward unity, collaboration, and service through one simple ingredient: love. Now, it is my great pleasure to turn the floor over to our keynote speaker, a woman who walks in the vanguard, Her Excellency Sheikha Al-Mayasa.
Thank you so much. And yes, let us break the walls of ignorance, and we are one big family. I would like to thank you for inviting me to join you today. It's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this important occasion. I would like to begin by thanking Dr. Kent Davis Packard and Dania Abdallah for your introductions. I applaud the tireless work of your entire team at Women Forward International to advance women, to advance society, and channel the transformative power of art. My thanks also to the many partners, sponsors, and others involved with the success of WFI, including the UN Institute for Training and Research, the participating academic institutions, and the impressive array of speakers and artists who will share their insights and talents with you today. It's getting late here in Qatar, so I wish I could stay with you for the whole duration, but I understand there'll be a recording sent out. My special thanks to the Embassy of Qatar and our ambassador, His Excellency Sheikh Mashal bin Hamad Al Thani, for his leadership and commitment and dedication of Aisha Al Misnet, the Assistant Defense Attaché and a WFI board member. Ladies and gentlemen, as we witness the ongoing recovery from the pandemic, we are keenly aware of our needs to work together to create a better world. As a global citizen, we are changed forever. As global citizens, I should say, we are changed forever. And in response to this, we must also change our collective approach to the important issues we face. This includes reevaluating and reimagining the role of the arts in the world. The good news is that these changes have already begun, and we have seen the positive role that artists are playing in the recovery. People around the world turned to art during this time of crisis. They participated in online arts experiences in record numbers, attending the fast-growing roster of virtual exhibitions and programs offered by museums around the world and Qatar museums here in Doha and others in the field. The digital space definitely becomes an important space to reconsider after the pandemic. They sought the inspiration and they sought the inspiration of art in outdoor spaces, flocking to sculpture parks, gardens, and installations of public art, which we have multiplied here in Doha. In a testament to the importance of creativity, they even used their face coverings as canvases for self-expression. Nowhere was a creative drive more evident than among the artists themselves. Around the world, they found new ways to make art and connect with audiences, new audiences. We now can appreciate more than ever the universal hunger for art and the role that artists can play in society, opening new perspectives on the challenges we face and imagining new ways to recognize and honor the humanity we all share. If the COVID-19 pandemic has made us more aware of our common humanity, it has also revealed the need for us to face our challenges together across the globe, wherever we are. It is now undeniable that the world's inequities touch us all. These inequities include the shortage of quality education and healthcare among underserved and under-resourced communities, the social and economic damage caused by climate change and food insecurity, generational poverty, and entrenched prejudices that prevent women from taking their rightful place in our economy. Our response cannot be a rush to return to the normal. In fact, there is a new normal that one has to consider. It should be a rallying cry for us to work together to create a better and more equitable world. We have spent more than a year with our faces covered to protect ourselves from a virus that's invisible and has exposed the flaws of existing systems. It didn't matter if you're rich or poor, famous or not, it affected us all equally. Let us now take this mask of indifference and commit ourselves to creating the world to which we all aspire to. I believe there are three major components to creating that world: education, the arts, and culture, and female leadership. When all children and young people have access to a quality education, they hold the key not only to unlock their own futures, but also to raise up and transform their communities, their nations, and the entire world. Art is a means of communication that can break down barriers, unite people, and change the way we think about ourselves and each other. The arts are crucial in enabling each country to share the best of itself with others throughout the world in a peaceful and tolerant space. It is open to everybody and anybody. And the arts are fundamental to creative and critical thinking, inspiring individuals to develop innovative solutions and designs for our future. Wherever you see progress being made, you also see the impact of an increase in women in leadership. It is why we are here today, brought together by the WFI. I am proud to say that Qatar provides examples of how progress can be made in all these key areas. Our efforts to create a progressive, modern society while remaining steeped in our culture is organic and evolving. We are fully determined that these efforts will continue. Under the visionary leadership of my mother, Her Highness Sheikh Hamza bint Nasser, the Qatar Foundation created a global campus known as Education City, welcoming women and men as equals and serving students from Qatar throughout the region. Education City is also a major instructional resource for children from a very young age. Here, from their first day of school all the way through postgraduate or professional studies, young people find the support that enables them to become active, productive citizens in whatever career path they choose. Not only are they getting an education, however, they're also inside buildings that have been built by very famous architects, and the whole urban space that has been created within Education City is inspirational by itself, I should say. And as a result, the lessons that students learn in Education City do not just stay in Education City. They spread far beyond this urban campus, leading to innovations beyond the borders of Qatar. Education and career developments are also cornerstones of the work of Qatar Museums, the Doha Film Institute, Reach Out to Asia, and the Qatar Leadership Center, of which I chair. I am pleased to say that we have made significant strides in developing an arts and culture ecosystem in Qatar that support young artists, filmmakers, and designers. We have focused on empowering people with skills to improve the growth of our society and economy, and men and women have equal access to all positions in government, whether public or private sector. They're paid equal salaries, and I'm very proud to say that a lot of progress has been made in this area. And in these initiatives, we do not shy away from questioning women's roles in societies around the world and offering images of women's empowerment. These are, in fact, distinct threads running through the projects of Qatar Museums, for example. Allow me to just give you 3 brief examples of exhibitions we have done to showcase the leading roles women have, not just in Qatar, but around the world. In 2013, at QM's Qatar Exhibition Gallery, we presented the first exhibition in the Middle East of the work of the Italian artist Francesco Visoli, titled The Museum of Crying Women. The collaged works in the exhibition were altered portraits of female celebrities shown in exaggerated sorrow. Visoli's subversive works prompted viewers to ask why there is a cultural assumption that successful women must be tragic figures. He also explained to me that the reason he showed women who are crying, or is called Crying Woman, in the exhibition is often when a woman decides to have children, it is her who needs to sacrifice her job over her husband, who doesn't have to carry on the same responsibilities. So the idea was also to create a notion of discourse to showcase the important role women have in participating in the economy and the development of society, but also the critical role they play in bringing up future generations to support that growth. In that same year, as we showed Visoli's work, Qatar Museums presented a contrasting exhibition at the Museum of Islamic Art. In this initiative, we invited 16 of the female artisans associated with the Prince of Wales Turquoise Mountain Foundation to come from Afghanistan to Doha for a residency. These women studied the ancient artifacts in the collection of the Museum of Islamic Art, and they made more than 40 new works of their own, which we displayed side by side with our treasures in an exhibition titled Farzukh, Tradition and Continuity in Afghan's Art. The third major contrasting initiative, which we presented in 2017, was an exhibition of works by the British photographer Jessica Fulmer Dobson titled Skate Girls of Kabul. This widely acclaimed series of photographs presented portraits of young girls in Afghanistan who come from disadvantaged families and who have found self-respect, self-expression, and community through skateboarding. We're very proud to have been the first institution in the Middle East to exhibit these photographs. Today, as we hear growing concerns about the future of young girls and women in Afghanistan, it seems all the more important to me that Qatar presents these initiatives and exhibitions. It's also important for young girls and women here to understand the struggles of women and girls around the world and be appreciative of the resources made available to them and the opportunities, but also to make a difference to their lives by contributing in their development and education. But now, turning from past efforts to the future, allow me to describe 2 important upcoming projects of Qatar Museums, both of which are highly relevant to today's theme. The Qatar Children's Museum, which we call DEDU, our museum for children, is currently under development. It will provide children and their families a place for learning and growth through inclusive, open-ended play, exploration, and experimentation. End of this year, we'll be opening our 321 Qatar Olympic and Sports Museum. It will be an experiential museum that not only offers an inspiring, interactive journey through the history of sports and the Olympic Games, but it also aims to encourage physical activity and a healthy lifestyle. It also allows us to be part of the IOC network and the museum in Lausanne. As I'm sure you're also aware, Qatar will host next year's FIFA World Cup. The 321 Museum is only one part of a broad program of exhibitions and cultural activities that we will be preparing as we welcome you, perhaps, in the world to Qatar. This focused, intentional approach to international exchange and understanding is also the underpinning of our ongoing series of Years of Culture. This year, Qatar is proud to be working with the United States as its partner nation for Qatar US 2021 Year of Culture. The specially curated program of exhibitions, bilateral exchanges, and events held in both nations enhances the ties between the people of our two nations and reaffirms our commitment to promoting dialogue through the arts. It also allows for various exchanges in business, education, health, science, in order to bring people from different parts of the world closer together and help in the understanding of our differences. All of these factors, education, art, and culture, and female empowerment, are enablers of any thriving society. We have incorporated these among the key elements of Qatar National Vision 2030, a framework for our country to reach our goals to become an advanced society capable of sustaining its development and providing a high standard of living for its people. These factors are also essential to the successful achievements of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the world's collective plan to end poverty, reduce inequities, and tackle climate change. It is exciting to imagine the possibilities ahead of us, and I am thrilled that today you'll discuss the many ways women can move forward to take their rightful place as leaders across the globe. Today's events must lead to building diverse, ever stronger partnerships that increases our ability to walk in the vanguard. Let us all leave today with a renewed dedication to our shared values, putting the empowerment of women and the bridging of hearts and minds of every individual at the center of our efforts. I challenge us all to think bigger and consider the power of possible, as the world's creative communities have done so movingly over the past year. We know what needs to be done. The opportunity to build the world to which we all aspire is within reach. Let us seize it while we can and give hope to millions around the world while we break these barriers. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you, and thank you.
Thank you for your inspiring words, Your Excellency. These words especially will resonate with us throughout our program today. Let us now take this mask of indifference and commit ourselves to creating the world we aspire to. Your innovative leadership in Qatar is very important to making this happen. So thank you, Your Excellency. I would now like to introduce Murshida Carol Weiland Connor, spiritual leader of Sufism Reoriented and founder of the White Pony Express, one of the organizations that WFI partnered with Stanford University this year. We will be hearing from their student team later on today. But first, we would like to share this special message Murshida Carol Weiland Connor has sent specifically for this event, entitled A New Paradigm of Life. Murshida Connor's work exemplifies the goal of all our programs and is an invitation to all to walk in the vanguard.
Every day, on the pleasant streets and paths near my home in a prosperous suburban city in Northern California, I walk for several miles. My walks usually take me through the downtown shopping district, where upscale restaurants, luxury department stores, and stylish boutiques draw affluent shoppers from throughout the region. On one such a walk several years ago, I was struck by how many of the elegantly dressed people I passed on the street looked tired of it all. For them, the pursuit of material goods appeared to have lost its charm. One woman I spoke with mentioned that she had wanted the obviously expensive, striking clothing she was wearing and had just bought, but now wished she could just give them away. Embarrassed by her burst of candor, she laughed and went on to say, of course, she didn't think anyone would want them. Later, on the same walk, I came upon several homeless people, hungry, cold, and abandoned, not far from my house. I soon learned that, surprisingly, poverty and food insecurity were significant problems in this wealthy county. Yet, supermarkets and restaurants were throwing away tons of unsold fresh food, just as fashion retailers were throwing away tons of unsold new clothing. There's so much material worth in this country that no one needs to go to bed without proper food, clothing, or shelter. And yet, in my state of California, a state so wealthy that it has the 5th largest economy in the world, an estimated 4.5 million people are either at or near the poverty level. In my county, which is the 5th wealthiest in the state, before the pandemic, more than 92,000 people needed help to feed and clothe themselves and their children. There is a simple solution that can end the problems of hunger and marginalization for good. A new paradigm: voluntary shared abundance. In this model of life, responsibility for helping the family of man is assumed by everyone, or in the phrases the White Pony Express often uses, all of us helping all of us. To support and nurture this new paradigm, this idea sprang to mind: to enable those who have more than they need to easily give it to those with less, so that all can share in the happiness and abundance of life. And so I started the White Pony Express Food Rescue Program in 2013. In the first week, we delivered more than 500 pounds a day of fresh, wholesome food to 20 service agencies, shelters, and food pantries, from one end of our county to the other. As of last month, White Pony Express has rescued and delivered more than 15 million pounds of food to 80 different agencies, serving 120,000 people in our county. We started with 4 volunteers. Now we have 400. The idea of shared abundance has caught on like wildfire, and the program has never stopped growing. Before long, I added programs to deliver high-quality clothing and other goods and services, along with help with basic problems of shelter and economic stability. Our work now includes food and clothing abundance redistribution, distribution of donated, unneeded government stimulus funds as cash gifts to needy families, and various activities to specially benefit children in our one human family. None of these programs came about through any deliberate planning on my part. In every case, a door opened on vistas gleaming with higher principle. I simply walked through without any foreknowledge of where it might lead. But in every case, it's led to new opportunities to share love in the service of life's unity. We've reached a point in universal history where mankind as a whole can begin to realize the fundamental truth that we all share one life. Human brotherhood is not something to aspire to. It's the central fact of our existence. The White Pony Express, as it always has, rushes ahead in the vanguard to deliver the good news and spread the abundance of life that follows. The White Pony Express is built on the understanding that in this beautiful world we share, love knows all, does all, and is the most powerful force in the universe. A new paradigm will not come about through fresh organizations of bureaucracy carved from limited mental understandings and resources. Nor will it come through charitable philanthropic giving, which perpetuates marginalization by reinforcing the notion of have and have not. It comes through spontaneous service to life, where each one helps each one in the one human family of man. The White Pony Express is creating a new paradigm for solving mankind's age-old problem of marginalization, hunger, and want. Our model, or something like it, is already being used by individuals and groups in communities from New York to San Francisco, many of whom have never heard of the White Pony Express. They discovered the paradigm on their own. That is what's supposed to happen. We hope that gradually, and before too long, this paradigm will be adopted by Americans everywhere as our way forward toward the realization of the basic unity of life. A master of our age reminds us, the coming of a spiritual age must be preceded by the appearance of an increasing number of individuals who are no longer satisfied with the normal, intellectual, vital, and physical existence of man, but perceive that a greater evolution is the real goal of humanity, an attempt to effect it in themselves, to lead others to it, and to make it the recognized goal of the race. In proportion as they succeed, and to the degree to which they carry this evolution, the yet unrealized potential which they represent will become an actual possibility of the future.
I would now like to introduce Ambassador Sharon Wilkinson. Chair of Women Forward International's Board of Directors, and our host for the Vanguard. Before I turn the floor over to her, I'd like our friends out there in the audience to know that you can submit questions throughout this event in the Q&A box on Zoom. We will answer as time permits. And now it is my pleasure to hand the mic to Ambassador Wilkinson for the Vanguard.
Thank you so much, Kent, and good morning to all of our attendees. We are so happy to see you here this morning. We are at a turning point in human history in which the principles of unity, collaboration, and service are playing a prominent role in human relations. Each of the presentations we will hear is an inspiring example of how we are living these principles. It is important for the international community to have the opportunity to witness these creative collaborations and take them as a template for positive change in their own community. We will hear presentations today addressing 4 of WFI's central areas of work to empower women: the power of women's education, what business women can do for their nations, women's leadership, and the impact of women's empowerment on creating sustainable systems. These will not be any regular academic presentations. We have asked our student teams to do something different. They're not allowed to use academic jargon, to share their experience in a creative way, to address the human issues at stake, and to demonstrate as fully as possible how their research can truly be of service to the world. We will also have the pleasure of hearing from a group of artists whose work reflects these projects and the principles that make all of us walk in the vanguard. Our first group of presentations is on the topic of the power of women's education. First up, we'll hear from the Lynn University Social Impact Laboratory team. Their presentation is titled "A New Horizon for Women's Education in Afghanistan, Establishing the First Private Women's University in Afghanistan." They will be followed by Dr. Sakina Yacoubi, CEO of the Afghan Institute of Learning, the partnership organization for which the students provided their recommendations. Lynn University team, you're up.
سلام و احترامات خود را خدمت دکتر سکینه و همچنان تمام دوستان که از افغانستان به اینجا هستند سلام میرسانم. So hello everyone, my name is Lema Sarhadi, and when I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a doctor. However, as I grew up, I realized that the pathway to becoming a doctor was next to impossible, particularly for a young girl living in Afghanistan. I got lucky with the opportunities I have, but Afghanistan education system has been devastated by more than 3 decades of sustained conflict, and not every young girl is so privileged. So for my country, completing higher education remains a distant dream for most girls, especially in rural areas. The dream and biggest hope of several families like mine is to have their son and daughter become educated, employed, and have an opportunity to earn a higher income. Our research explores potential solutions to the obstacles that stand in the way of opening a women's university in Afghanistan in order to turn Afghanistan's deficiency in higher education, employment, and productivity in its strength. We focus our study on the gaps in existing curriculum as well as possible future employment opportunities to develop a forward-thinking curriculum for women in Afghanistan. We accomplished the goal of developing a tangible curriculum for the Women's University by focusing on specific skills they might need to be immediately employed in Afghanistan. We use our primary findings to explain our stakeholders map and the positions we believe they will play in the development of this university. We formulate a strategy for carefully engaging and understanding our partners as well as the existing system frameworks in order to suggest reform. According to our findings, there is a strong imbalance between the skills that universities offer and the skills that employees have. So based on our research, our findings, the curriculum deliverable will be the 6 major chosen. These will be journalism, nursing, technical education training, entrepreneurship, political science, and physiology. These are based on what our research has shown relevant fields of the study relevant for the position women in Afghanistan are in, not only to improve their lives and the economy of Afghanistan, but also to prove to society the importance of women's future and education.
Afghan's Women Perspective into the Future, a poem by Lima, Avery, and Uchi. Just like a nestling ready to fly, I've longed for a time where I, a woman, would rise. Maturity I've grown to see equals femininity, simply mothering within the home, a truth that today I hold false. Taught only to a point by sirs, as no madams can be found, so I proceed. My potential is limited, while my brothers learn to dominate. Society withholds my key to success, efforts to free me and my sisters, through reading and writing and in bloodshed generations of trauma. My fellow girls who've resisted lie fatally injured, their faces disfigured. We are learning to part with our dreams, our silence in attempt to life over death. I am the next generation, a true daughter of Afghanistan, tomorrow's leader and mentor. My right to education is long overdue.
The goal. As the sun watches over me, I lift my hands up, keeping my future close to my heart. Today, I reclaim my power. Through education, let's create a stable, just society. Freedom, a better future is all I ask. Control over my life, my one sincerest wish. I strive for a day my family cheers me on. Standing side by side with my brothers, my sisters and I, acknowledged, fully equipped with successful skill sets. I am the next generation, independently standing my ground as an advocate for peace, gender equality, a job that is mine, a safe walk to work without chains.
The future.
You have 1 minute.
A season where my dreams are a reality and my tomorrow is different, with me holding my diploma in hand. A life with professors who look like me, in biology lectures with my sisters, a few months from being nurses, someday they'll be doctors. A day where I can create through code and provide hope through political science and law. A period where rather than feel I am comforted by my gender, educating youth on our economy, translating my education into social mobility. A time where all the daughters of Afghanistan flock to school joyfully, supported by their fathers and mothers. I am like water, moldable, adaptable, yet needed. I am the next generation, the role model I always wish I had growing up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn University team. That was beautiful. Now, Dr. Yacoubi, the floor is yours.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I am so impressed and I am so thankful to the Lynn University, to the Women for Forward International. Just I want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart to say that that kind of opportunity for the girls of Afghanistan is very, very important. And I led the research team to have the discussion because I just want to listen like every one of you, be one of the listeners. Thank you for everyone, especially Lynn University students. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very glad for having the chance to join you. It's honor and great pleasure for me to present here. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Women Forward International, the students research team of Lynn University, and Dr. Yacoubi, the CEO of Afghan Institute of Learning, for conducting this joint research. I do believe that its outcome will make a real difference to the lives of women and girls in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is home to an estimated 38 million people, and this population structure contains 49.9% of women. However, this country has always been a hotbed of gender inequality that you can see in different aspects, particularly in education. Despite the immense efforts to improve the education sector in the last decade, the global statistic provided by the Ministry of Education in 2019 showed that the number of females attending university is still as low as 29. This indicates that women continue to face a significant barriers to access higher education. There is still a long way in improving female education, since their access to educational and employment opportunity is a social cultural issue that has been shaped throughout our history. Afghan Institute of Learning has always been seeking believes that one of the intervention to alleviate females' situation may include the establishment of women university, which would be a great unprecedented event in this region. AIL states that founding a university for women would address some of the barriers that prevents women and girls from participation in education system. To begin with, due to the dominance of religious beliefs and traditional norms, the majority of families still desire their daughter to attend in a single-gender university. The absence of this kind of university has prevented many girls from having a higher education. I recall a friend of mine in the high school who was a talented girl and dreamed to becoming an engineer. However, she hasn't been allowed to participate in a co-educational place like Herat University. So establishment of a women university will be the best response to this traditional families' demands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yacoubi and Dr. Sultani. Next, we'll hear from the Georgetown University School of Foreign Service in partnership with Afghan Women Peace Builders. Their presentation is titled Women's Rights in Islam and the Peace Process in Afghanistan. Team, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yumna Al-Madani, and myself and Huda Al-Haddad will be presenting on the Islam and Negotiation Toolkit. Over the last few months, we've engaged in research on Islamic legal and theological arguments founded on democratic institutions and peace building. With our lead researcher, Dr. Aisha Kadefich Oriana, we've created a toolkit aimed at supporting Afghan women negotiators who are engaged in the political settlement in Afghanistan to negotiate their rights and participation in all aspects of Afghan society. Throughout our presentation today, we will discuss this research, the Afghan negotiation team, and our outcomes.
We would like to start by reading a poem by Naza Tokay, an Afghan Pashtun poet. Dewdrops from an early dawn, Narcissus, as if teardrops from a melancholy eye. Oh, beauty, I asked, what makes you cry? Life is too short for me, it answered. My beauty blooms and withers in a moment, as if a smile comes and forever fades away. This poem was wrote by a great lady, a wonderful lady. She was born around 1651 near Tazi, Kandahar, in a village near Tazi, Kandahar province of Afghanistan. Nazo Tokay was considered the mother of Afghan nation. She held endless and many leadership roles in the society. She was the mother of the famous early 18th century Afghan king Mirwais. Her family invested in her education and training. She took part and was a legendary lady. She gained authority through her poetry and upholding of the Pashtunwali code. She called for Pashtunwali to be the law of the confederacy of the Pashtun tribes. She arbitrated conflicts between Ghazai and Sadozai Pashtun tribes, so to encourage their alliance with each other. She provides an example, just a mere example of many women that took part in the Afghan society, women who took roles in furthering and making the society better.
So what is our toolkit? The Toolkit on Islamic Sources of Negotiation, Good Governance, and Gender Justice for Afghan Women Negotiators offers effective guidance on organizing and strategizing within the negotiation process. It incorporates Islamic and prophetic texts, principles, values, and symbols. It is used to assist all Muslim and non-Muslim negotiators who are involved in negotiations with Muslims or mediators with an Islamic focus. It aims to educate, inform, and promote more effective ways of garnering peaceful and long-term results concerning human rights.
Beyond that, we wanted to bring to light the Afghan women negotiation team. These are the 4 women that have been fighting a lot to further women's rights and gender justice in Afghanistan. They have been negotiating with the Taliban, although it has been so very hard given the Taliban tries to exclude women from the space of negotiation. Not only, but they also have been trying to push for to lower women's education till 6th grade and only in Islamic education and segregated society. But thankfully, these women have been taking their efforts to negotiate and fight for more justice. For these women to efficiently negotiate with the Taliban, they also need argue through religious counter-arguments. And so this toolkit provides the textual evidence that is rooted in Islamic text and prophet teaching that shows how Islam is compatible with democracy. This toolkit shows how to negotiate using profit bargaining, strategies, goals, and his negotiation teams historically that even included women in them.
And our outcomes. So throughout this process and our research, the main challenge that we did have was not having that in-person engagement due to circumstances this year. So we could not in person meet with the negotiators and leaders in this peace process. Our main recommendation will be this toolkit, as it serves as a way to better understand Islamic peace building and the history of the Prophet and women in conflict resolution. Throughout this toolkit, negotiators working with an Islamic group have the historical background and the theological knowledge to better negotiate and come to better long-lasting solutions. And in total, we hope that the impacts of this will be to highlight and provide significant Islamic legal and theological arguments centered on gender justice, democratization, peace building to counter Taliban's claims that limit women's inclusion in society. And we also hope that it illustrates the necessity of women's involvement in peace building and society's prosperity, and also reflect that women were never restricted economically, politically, and academically by Islam. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Georgetown team. Well done. I would next like to introduce our first expert panel. Ambassador Milan Verveer is the Executive Director of the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, and the first U.S. Ambassador for Global Women's Issues. She will be in conversation with Dr. Kent Davis Packard, the President and Executive Director of Women Forward International. They will be responding to the 2 teams that just presented and discussing the importance of women's empowerment for progress in Afghanistan. Kent, I hand the floor to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Wilkinson. Ambassador Rivera, it's wonderful to have you here, someone who has worked for decades on this issue of peace building in Afghanistan. President Biden's deadline for removing the remaining 2,500 US troops from Afghanistan is September 11th of this year. NATO will likely follow. The Taliban was pushed out of the country 20 years ago by the United States and the Northern Alliance. The Taliban regrouped, fought back, emerged again. Some of the Taliban support is from the Afghan people who have witnessed corruption, including billions of foreign dollars coming into the country to build infrastructure, but from which many of the Afghan people feel they have yet to benefit. My question for you is, what do you see as the greatest practical value of these projects, these presentations you've heard from Lynn University and Georgetown University for progress in Afghanistan?
Well, thank you for the question, Kent, and most especially Thank you for what you're doing with Women Forward International. And I love the concept of Vanguard, because leading a new way with new ideas is so critically important today. And this section that you've just been through on education is all about empowerment and the potential of women to be able to participate in every way in their societies. And as you just pointed out so eloquently in your question, you know, how does this matter? How does this make a difference? And if we don't unleash the potential of half the population in Afghanistan, which has done tremendous things in this period of the last 20 years, especially, but has a long history, they are all about the future that we are discussing here. The women have made incredible gains, but this is a moment of potential peril. With the troops withdrawing, there is great concern. As you know, the violence has been extreme. There have been especially assassinations targeted on women's leadership in civil society, journalists, Supreme Court justices, human rights activists, and most recently the school, Hazari mostly school in Afghanistan, where the suicide bombing took place. These are terrible situations that need to be addressed. And what we heard today, thanks to the work that you and so many are doing, investing in education, enabling that potential to be realized, the toolkit that we at Georgetown have been working on with the students and our scholars, testing with Afghan women and being responsive to the request from Afghan women, help us show that our deep faith, our Islamic faith, is consistent with women's rights. And it is indeed consistent. It is the Taliban who've hijacked the religion, used it for political purposes to keep that potential of women from being realized. And this is a tool for negotiators, but not just for negotiators, for peace builders, for advocates, for university women, to demonstrate that there is no inconsistency between their faith and the rights of women to fully realize their God-given potential that is so important to the future of Afghanistan.
Thank you, Ambassador Vervier. I'm going to ask a more specific question now about the behavior of the Taliban and in light of current events, how a private women's university and the toolkit on women's rights in Islam will impact their behavior. One conclusion that many have reached is that the only way to reach a negotiated peace deal in Afghanistan is to talk with the Taliban. Since 2010, Taliban leaders and envoys have been appearing in Qatar, trying to negotiate a settlement. The Taliban may perceive the new government as weak in the wake of US and NATO withdrawal, and could pursue military takeover of the entire country. If we were to disincentivize the Taliban from doing this, how would we do that? For example, the Taliban says everything will be based on Islamic law, but they are not explaining what that means. They haven't published anything. So how would this university and or this toolkit on women's rights in Islam impact the Taliban's behavior?
Well, both of them are tools of empowerment, and they are negotiating tools. If you talk to the women who have been face to face with the Taliban in Qatar, they will tell you at first the men didn't even want to look at them. But as they got their points across, they were listened to. Now, whether or not in the long term that has made changes to the individuals remains to be seen. But you need the ability to state your ground, to know where you come from, to be able to say, this is important for you to see the difference educated women can make, and not keeping them out of school, even young girls. The difference our faith represents in terms of those rights. You know, we just heard from Dr. Yakubi. When she would go and set up schools across Afghanistan, usually around mosques, sometimes she was challenged by the imams who would say there is no room for girls in our religion, for girls' education. and she would take out her worn Quran and say, there is no inconsistency with educating a girl in schooling. These are the concepts that have to be gotten across. These have to be imbued very, very deeply. There's no incentive right now for the Taliban to come to the table. They feel that they are in a position of all gain and no loss. But the great loss will be if the gains of women are erased and the future of Afghanistan is one that will not be what anyone wants to see.
And speaking of that longer term vision for the country, Ambassador Revere, why does women's empowerment really matter at all for a country in this stage, one that's being reborn with a new government?
No country can get ahead if half of its people are left behind. The talent, the experience, the potential, the perspectives are so critical. Today, you are looking at education. You are looking at economic participation. You are looking at political participation. Those areas are critical to any country. You cannot write off the talent of half the population. Look what Afghan women have already achieved in Afghanistan. That should be a sign for all of us as to what more is needed to go forward, not be pushed back. You know, I'm listening to all of the flourishing of the arts that you have melded into what Women Forward has represented. That one day when I was in Afghanistan, a woman journalist handed me a plastic bouquet of flowers, very tiny bouquet of miniature flowers. And she said, there's a saying in Afghanistan that one flower alone will not make it. But imagine all the flowers together, like this bouquet represents. That's what is in Afghanistan's future. All of these flowers, cultivated, nurtured, coming together to create a better future than the one we are all so worried about today may not transpire.
Thank you, Ambassador Revere. Pleasure talking with you. I want to remind the audience that you can feel free to put questions in the chat box. And I'm going to end our session for the moment and turn it back over to Ambassador Wilkinson.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Revere and Kent. Perfect framing of the issue for us. The next two presentations will explore what business women can do for their nations. First, we will hear from Natalia Wills, country representative from Mexico for ProMujer. Her presentation is titled Breaking Barriers to Expand Opportunities for Women-Led Business in Latin America. This program is the result of the WFI-supported partnership with the Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank this moment to thank Women Forward International, Dr. Ken Davis Packard, and the whole WFI team for their support to advance women's rights and genderless investing in Mexico and Latin America. ProMujer is a mission-driven social enterprise advancing gender equality in Latin America. Our innovative programs in financial inclusion, impact investing, entrepreneurship, and health are developed first and foremost with a women-centered, impact-driven approach. Over the course of 30 years, we have witnessed how investing in women creates not only economic development, but also social and environmental impact. When you invest in a woman, it has a ripple effect, not only changing that woman's life, but also their families and communities. However, systemic inequalities, implicit biases, and a mismatch between the needs of investors and women-led businesses have all contributed to the 93 billion financing gap faced by women entrepreneurs in Latin America. Since 2019, we have been working on advancing genderless investing in the region, leveraging the use of capital to close the financing gap and also gender gaps. Gender lens investing is a strategy or an approach to investing that takes into consideration gender-based factors across the investment process to advance gender equality and better inform investment decisions. To foster gender lens investing in the region, ProMujer has pursued two main strategies. First, together with Ditken Impact, we created the ILU Women's Empowerment Fund with a comprehensive gender strategy to invest $35 million into women-led businesses and businesses that contribute transforming the lives of girls and women. We have already deployed 20 million in 22 loans across Latin America. Our second strategy is to strengthen the ecosystem, advocating through events, trainings, tools, and publications to use capital to leverage gender equality, inviting and advising investors on how to include a gender lens into their investment strategies and processes. And this is the piece where our alliance with Women Forward has been crucial. In early 2020, we worked together with a team of Columbia University students to understand the gaps between women entrepreneurs and investors in Mexico. This study aimed to better understand the barriers to raising capital that women-led businesses face in Mexico and identify actionable solutions to bridge the gap between women entrepreneurs and investors. The research findings confirm that gender gaps are broad, and the path for female entrepreneurs to access capital is more difficult than for their male counterparts, regardless of the business quality, entrepreneurs' competences, and socioeconomic background. ProMujer reaffirms its commitments to advance gender equality and visibilize the existing gaps in Latin America, providing access to capital, technical assistance, power and personal skills, and business training to women entrepreneurs across the region. Here, I would like to share my screen to talk about a very important concept, the concept of sorority. Sororidad, which is the Spanish word for sorority, has been included in the dictionary of Spanish just in 2018. And sororidad means the relation of sisterhood and solidarity amongst women to create support networks changes to achieve gender equality. It is not an end in itself, but a means to work together to challenge the patriarchal system. While social entrepreneurs have demonstrated that business can simultaneously be an engine to close inequality gaps and promote economic development, women-led social enterprises have been proving that social entrepreneurship has also been a mechanism for women helping other women thrive. Let me briefly present a social business in Mexico that has built a sisterhood of hope for hundreds of incarcerated women. The company's name is La Cana. It's a Spanish slang word for the jail. This social business created by 4 women professionals with the purpose of transforming Mexican jails in places of opportunities instead of punishment. They have developed a social reinsertion program for incarcerated women so that they can earn an income while they are in jail and find a job once they recover their freedom. The holistic program includes job training, legal advice, mental health, and personal development. This is so important because 98% of women, while in prison, become the main breadwinner of their household. Most of them are the sole income producers for their families. The business model of La Cana allows women deprived of their liberty to produce and sell cuddly toys, generating an income for them and their families. This is one of the beneficiaries of La Cana, and she says, "My work is what allows me to feel alive and gives me the hope to keep fighting for my dreams. With hard work and effort, you can achieve everything you set out to do in life. My motto every day is Lacana. It gives me work and it gives me hope. And I repeat it to myself every day so that I don't forget that I'm lucky to have found a job where I feel valued and it helps me to support my children. There are no words with which I can thank them for everything they do for us. The best way I can find to repay them is to do my job. Lacana is giving hope and dignity to women in traditionally excluded environments. Social enterprises are challenging the business system, creating sustainable models to use the market as a force for good. Genderless investment questions the financial system. We are creating new paradigms to use capital to leverage gender equality. I would like to close my presentation with a powerful quote from Maya Angelou. Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women. Thank you for letting me be part of the Vanguard.
And thank you too, Natalia, for being part of the Vanguard. Now we will hear from Rocio Cavazos, who is the founder and managing partner of the Ananda Group. Her presentation is titled Transformation Through Women's Leadership in Mexico. This program is the result of the WFI-supported partnership with the Harvard University Kennedy School of Government. Rocio, you're up.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Wilkinson. It is a real pleasure to be here with all of you today and to get the chance to share with you a little bit of the work we've done in collaboration with Women Forward International. So I would like to start by sharing with you a little bit of what Ananda Group is, what we do. We are an organization that supports and invests in entrepreneurs who are empowering consumers to adopt an ethical, healthy, and environmentally conscious lifestyle without the use of animals. Our organization was created by women and is led by women. And we work with and we support a young, mission-driven business sector with predominant women participation. This is the plant-based sector in Mexico, and according to our database and our experience, over 70% of businesses in the plant-based sector in Mexico have women founders. So last year, we had a team from the Harvard Kennedy School, sponsored by Women Forward International, conduct research on the needs and challenges of women entrepreneurs in the plant-based sector in Mexico. And in their report, some of their main recommendations included support for plant-based networks and associations, investment towards gender-specific programming, and emphasize and support business and technology skills training. So with these recommendations in hand, we proceeded with the implementation. And regarding networks and associations, we spearheaded the creation of a nonprofit organization called the Association of Vegan Entrepreneurs of Mexico, EVM, by its acronym in Spanish, and I will share with you some of our activities. In terms of gender-specific programming, we have developed content and events specifically designed for women entrepreneurs in the Mexican plant-based sector, and I'll share some examples of that. And on the topic of business and technology skills training, we have developed an alliance and a scholarship program with the leading business academy for women in Mexico, Victoria 147. So in the association, we host events and create content specifically designed for entrepreneurs in the plant-based sector, including monthly webinars on topics of high value added for this entrepreneurial community, and an annual conference that we call the Vegan Entrepreneurs Forum, where we aim to connect our community of entrepreneurs with the national and global plant-based industry, with international experts and the latest developments. We also aim to provide a platform for networking, cross-learning, and mutual support and mutual inspiration among entrepreneurs. We have developed content from entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs in support of each other. And one way we've done this has been through the creation of video series that we've put out in social media. Our first campaign was called United, We Are Stronger. And this came out in the height of the COVID-19 crisis, where many businesses were really struggling, facing very harsh conditions. Some of them saw their business reduced by 90%. Some had to even shut down and face some heart-wrenching situations. And so we had some generous entrepreneurs who were overcoming this situation, share their words of advice and words of encouragement with the entrepreneurial community. One of them was Miriam Saga from Mora Mora, who reminded entrepreneurs that they're good at creating, and no matter how many times life may put us in a situation where we need to reinvent ourselves in our businesses, that is what we have to do, and that is what we are good at. And Georgina Meyer from Casa Macro, who saw the opportunity in this crisis, in the sense that the pandemic made our message even more relevant and more urgent, reminding us that we are part of the planet that hosts us, and that it is our responsibility and our duty to connect with the earth, to respect her and to protect her in order to protect our own health, which the pandemic also reminded us it's a huge treasure that we may have been taken for granted. Another campaign we called Juntas Transformemos el Mundo, or Together Let's Transform the World. And this was an all women entrepreneur video series where these women shared their experiences and their advice in dealing with prejudice, discrimination, and gender-based obstacles to creating and growing their businesses. Therefore, sharing their lessons learned and the words of wisdom with the women that are following their footsteps. And with the purpose of promoting the recovery of plant-based businesses from the COVID crisis, and at the same time, reaching out in support of very vulnerable groups in our society, we created our Mesa Redonda program, or Round Table program. In this program, the participating vegan restaurants invite their customers to purchase meals to be delivered to vulnerable communities such as Indigenous women who have suffered from violence, and women and children, migrants who we know face all kinds of adversities in their journeys through deserts and rivers, and risk their lives and face all types of violence and abuse. So our team of volunteers collect the meals purchased at participating restaurants every month and bring them to the neighborhoods and the settlements where these communities live. In collaboration with NGOs that work closely with them, we bring them healthy and nourishing food, and perhaps as important or even more important, we bring them the message that we care and that they're not alone. Regarding business skills training, as I mentioned earlier, we've developed an alliance with the leading business academy for women in Mexico, Victoria 147. And we have developed a scholarship program where Victoria 147 provides a scholarship. We provide a supplementary scholarship to make it very accessible for women entrepreneurs in the plant-based sector to participate in their programs, to build their business skills, their knowledge, and connections among women entrepreneurs, which are very important for the growth of their businesses and the development of their leadership. So by supporting women's leadership in a growing and mission-driven business sector, EVM aims to encourage principles of regeneration, compassion, nurture, cooperation, and collective well-being to play an increasing role in the way we run our businesses. We make choices as consumers, and we take on our shared responsibility for a healthy and harmonious world. And so to close, I'd like to leave you with this beautiful image of a mural that I think portrays our aspiration for our contribution of women to the transformation of our world. The mural is called Flying in Sorority by artist Adri del Rocio, and she created it for the Generation Equality Forum in Mexico City. And I'd just like to close with the words of Kavita Ramdas, because I think they really capture the essence of our vision. We need women who are so strong, they can be gentle, so educated, they can be humble, So fierce, they can be compassionate. So passionate, they can be rational. And so disciplined, they can be free. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Natalia and Rocio, for those very inspiring words. Now we'll hear from our next expert panel that will provide an analysis of the previous two presentations. Let me introduce them. Our first panelist is Winji Sampaio, who is the Global Program Director of the Cartier Women's Initiative. Also, we have Sandra Espinet, who is a luxury interior designer. Now, let me just give a note to our audience. You've been wonderful and patient and not commenting very much, but we encourage you to please put your questions or your comments in the chat so that we might share a few with our larger audience. Thank you. And now, Winji and Sandra, you are up.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Yes, lovely to be here too. Yes, I would love to share a bit about sort of our thoughts, I guess, of the first two panel around Pro-Mihir's work, as well as the Ananda Group's work. So first and foremost, my name is Winji Sampaio. I'm based in Paris, and I am the program director for the Cartier Women Initiative. We are a global program that supports women impact entrepreneurs. And so very much so, Natalia, in your work at Pro-Mihir, we are so happy to hear of all the great social impact entrepreneurs that you're supporting in Mexico. More importantly, I think something about your presentation that really struck me was this idea of sisterhood. And this is something that very much so we value a lot at the Cartier Women Initiative. And very much so we've been trying to build a sisterhood amongst the women impact entrepreneurs that are part of our program globally. And so I really think that it is fantastic that you have built such a great sisterhood of women entrepreneurs in Mexico. And we look forward to meeting many of them and then hopefully crossing paths together in the Cartier Women Initiative. I also had a chance to really take a look at Ananda's group, Rosia's, your presentation. I have to say, I was also very moved by what you were describing as creativity. And that being very important amongst entrepreneurs, and that entrepreneurs are really at the crux of creating. And this actually is one of the core values of Cartier and is one of our main inspiration to be launching the Cartier Women Initiative. And the Cartier Women Initiative has been around for 15 years. And of course, our Maison has been around for 200 years. That started as an entrepreneurship. But very much so, we hold the value of creativity and creating very close to our hearts. And we really are inspired by the women impact entrepreneurs in how they create leverage business as a force for good and create solutions to the world's most challenging problems. And very much so in creativity, there's no diversity in idea if there's no inclusion. And so for us, diversity and inclusion is so important and critical into this matter of creativity and creation in the world. So thank you both so much for your presentation and also for your work that you're doing. We look forward to working and collaborating together with you and practicing the work of the Vanguard.
Thank you so much, Winji. Sandy?
Hi, good morning from LA to everybody. And I love questions. Everybody, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. I think I'm a little bit different than some of the amazing people that you guys have here on your panel. I come from the private sector. So I am an interior designer, luxury interior designer, and most of my clients, all of my clients are high net worth individuals. So I design for people who have everything, been everywhere, done it. And so I have a small company of 18 women, and I work between the US and Mexico, so 2 design firms, 1 in each country. And I think I'm a good example of, I'm an immigrant to the United States. And as a female and immigrant, what I've done with my life, I think is a bit of aspiration. I always get a lot of women going, how did you do that? And the main thing is education. And I know someone earlier was talking about education. It's the key to, I think, success. And my theory on women's moving forward is I think we need to do. Yeah, I know it's different for every country, and but if you have an education, not demand a spot, but take the spot, and to be able to understand where you fit in into culture, into a male's culture. If it's a career in a male-oriented, like let's say finance or military, how do you fit in, and what is the art of being a female in the world right now? And that's a very fine line of, in my case, it's the art of interior design, the art of business, and the art of being a female without losing myself and what I feel that I stand for while I work. So that has been, like I said, a very fine line of where, what is it that you sacrifice? And you can't be everything. And in order to be an entrepreneur female, to have your own company, have employees, you have to sacrifice something. Some people sacrifice children. Some people's marriages fall apart. You can't do everything. So pick and choose. And I love it when people have focus and they know what they want, and they can go and they can achieve what they want through the private sector. It's a little bit different than when you're doing NGOs where you're directly helping. Like I'm looking at Rocio's work. It's amazing because you're directly, you can see the change in people's lives. So in my case, from the private sector, it's who do I hire? How do I affect the women? Because my company has only in its history had one male. And so it's mainly women. So how do you account for the fact that women are going to get married, take time off for babies, interact differently with male vendors? So we have taught women throughout the ages of how to dress appropriately, how to behave appropriately, how to fit into the world of business. So I think that's very important also, is just the actuality of taking your spot instead of just demanding it and act appropriately.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Winji. If I may, I'd like to ask a question of both of you. How does investment in women entrepreneurs reflect a new paradigm for human relations emerging in this era? An easy question. Either one of you can take it.
Oh, well, I'll go first if you don't mind, Mindy, because this is so easy. Like I said, I'm an example of that. Without education, your chances diminish. I mean, to succeed, you have, in today's world, you have to be educated. So that is key. It's number one. It's something that nobody can take away from you. And if you have an understanding of who you are and what you can do, and you're prepared for it, you can achieve anything. And I just, I feel very strongly about that. So education is, without a doubt, the number one thing you can do for yourself. And then you don't have to demand. You can just take that spot and go for it and do whatever you want to do to your capability. And nobody can take that away from you.
Thank you, Sandy. Winji, did you want to weigh in on that one?
Sure, yes. I mean, I think supporting women in terms of their business and entrepreneurship is really important because gender inequality in entrepreneurship actually contributes to, if we achieve gender equality in entrepreneurship, we actually can add to the global GDP by $2.5 trillion. And so that is really significant. And I think, I think once, I think maybe it's also best summarized by the fact that we have so many challenges around the world. Why would we only use 50% of the potential of the world to solve it? And so I hope this itself should be an important enough motivation to invest in women entrepreneurs that are also trying to solve the challenges around the world.
Absolutely. And then another question, another big question for both of you. How do women entrepreneurs help lift a nation?
Well, I mean, mine is very small. Like I said, I have a small business, very different than Cartier, which is a large organization. So if I just look at my small organization, the 18 to 22 girls that are being hired, 3 of them have gone on to start their own design firm in a third world country. So I feel that those are, I love my proteges. They continue and they go on and they're going to flourish. So I think the experience that they get, so for me, it's being a good leader. If I'm a good leader and I can push them into the world, that's the best that I can do in a small arena. Now, Wingy, what do you think? And you're big because you have the bigger remit with Cartier.
Yes, in running our program for women impact entrepreneurs, you must be wondering, like, why specifically focus on women impact entrepreneurs? Because actually, when we take a look at the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, it finds that actually women are the motivation for starting a business. There are more women motivated to start a business to create social and environmental change in the world. And as a result, we find that actually, because of that motivation to create social environmental change, it gives us additional impetus to support them because of all the additional barriers that they face that are unfair in the entrepreneurship world. And so for us, this is why we're so keen on specifically focusing on women impact entrepreneurs. We feel that when we even look at our program, actually, the women entrepreneurs in our program, the top 3 UN SDG goals that they try to solve is education, health, and gender equality. And so those are very basic things that the world all needs. And so this is how we feel that women entrepreneurs can help lift our of the world, not just our nation, I suppose.
You have 1 minute left.
Great. I think that you'll both agree that with this new cadre of empowered women and entrepreneurs, they can't help but lift up their nations by the very fact of their existence, of the work that they're doing, of the example that they're setting, and how many people, especially the young women, they're helping along the way. That cannot help but lift their nation. Thank you so much, ladies. That was a very, very interesting panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we'll discuss the theme, the new voice in politics. Our first presentation in this section will be from the Paris Institute of Political Studies team, known as Sciences Po. Their presentation is titled Sharing the Mic, Rallying Behind a Generation of Young Migrant and Refugee Women. Following Sciences Po, we will hear from Alisa Ahrabari, who is the project officer with the European Network of Migrant Women, the partner organization for which the students provided their recommendations. Their presentation will be followed directly by the WFI Director of Arts Partnerships, Wesley Spencer, who will introduce The Artist's Response, the Key to Change, Building a Bridge from the Mind to the Heart. Sciences Po team, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Wilkinson, Dr. Davis Packard, and distinguished guests.
Which is to say, hello, hi, how are you, friends and sisters of the Vanguard? This, that, here or there, we're just here to share.
As we were saying, we have the great honor to transmit to the members of the plenary the accomplishments of our team and to jointly celebrate the richness of our experiences and findings.
What is it to be woman? To be woman under attack by state, essentialized by ally, do you hear me?
The richness of our experiences and findings, exploring the opportunity for young migrant women to participate in international political processes amidst Europe's migration crisis.
Crisis?
Migration question.
What is this question? Against backdrop of our border securitization, my people's continued dehumanization, you ask the wrong questions. Questioning me, terrorist, do you hear yourself? Do you hear me? Even when I learn your language, I am dismissed for accent and green card handed down charge of
integration.
Erasure.
We must prioritize integration in our institutions, promoting their representation at all levels of decision-making, integration in our society, challenging through education harmful stereotypes and gender roles born out of tradition and the stigmatization of
our precarity. I won't be your token. Do you hear me? You can keep your frameworks 1,000 miles away, untouched and unmoving, resting on the empty promise of
justice, access to justice and appropriate remedies for the migrant women who have been deprived of their political rights, for the migrant women who have suffered from discrimination, justice for the...
For who?
For the migrant women.
Who are these migrant women? How do we exist in your resolutions and your reports, your hearts and your hands? Show me I can trust you. Show me that you know the weight of these facts and these figures.
How?
Hear me.
Well, the floor is yours.
Let me rephrase. How about you start?
Enlarge what you imagine to be political participation. See me, agent of change. Hear me, speaker and visionary.
We call upon relevant stakeholders to build partnerships and collaborate with the humanitarian and private sector to integrate migrant women's voices at all levels and ensure autonomy.
Cultivate spaces safe enough for us to lay down our arms and bear our voices unedited and unbridled.
We call for solidarity among stakeholders to foster a more interconnected local community of civil society organizations, associations, host communities, and beneficiaries.
Benefits and benevolence emphasize the personal. Come, join, shift to the internal.
We call upon all those committed to gender equity to actively reach out to groups of young migrant women that are less visible.
Let the sight of us transform the shape of your tongue. Allow it to bend to the will of other masters, masters named love, nicknamed sisterhood, one curious enough to taste this battle cry of emancipation through art. Thank you. So that was a spoken word poem called Speaking in Tongues. I believe it captures the essence of this project, the power of art to bridge the academic with the practical, the mind with the heart, all for our collective emancipation.
And as in any research project, we had to choose the scope of our research and the framework that would guide and shape our analysis and our recommendations. So during this process, we encountered 4 different dimensions that interrelate in very complex ways, which are race, age, class, and gender. And in fact, these social and political characteristics or identities intersect to create different modes of exclusion and discrimination that mutually reinforce each other. However, when we were conducting our research, we observed several gaps regarding the interconnectedness of these 4 dimensions. And we also noted that the academic and political narratives continue to reproduce very reductionist, victimizing, and somewhat paternalistic visions of young migrant women. And this is a problem because it prevents the reach of more substantive conclusions and policies to harness their agency and enhance their political participation at all levels. Hence, our objective was to shed light on the implications and consequences of these discriminations, which are rooted in deep and prevalent power structures, on the way they condition political participation or the lack of it, and provide recommendations to overcome these obstacles.
In the midst of COVID, our team had to be flexible and adapt to the distance that was going to be put between the participants and ourselves. And so by combining our existing network with the European Network of Migrant Women and social media, we were able to gather a diverse panel of participants and interviewees. Through that, we were able to adopt an unguarded point of view, which allowed us to tackle the wide-ranging issues at the core of our research project. As representation was one of the foci of our research, we made a point of understanding and challenging inclusivity and voice within the research process itself. We chose to hybridize the research process with interviews on the one hand and a capacity building workshop on the other. And through that, all relevant stakeholders were able to engage in dialogue. And the analysis came out more comprehensive than if we had compartmentalized voices and reproduced the disconnect, which sometimes affects representation, especially political representation. And now I'll pass down the mic to Alisa from the European Network of Migrant Women.
Thank you. The European Network of Migrant Women is an NGO gathering over 50 member organizations in 23 European states. Our members are grassroots service providers working directly on the ground with migrant women and girls. As a network, our work is all about bringing our members together and facilitating their work. We also carry projects and advocate for migrant women and girls' rights at the European level. We always want to bring the lived realities of migrant women and girls into our work. And when it comes to political participation, young migrant women are amongst the most discriminated groups in the world. So to meaningfully include them in spaces of power, capacity building is needed to tackle self-limitations, internalized stereotypes, and traumas. This is why it was of great importance for us to bring forward today 2 amazing young women who participated in the capacity building workshops that we conducted through this project. It's Fatima, a refugee from Russia, and Analu, a migrant from Brazil. So right now I want to give them the floor. Thank you, sisters.
Hello, my name is Fatima, and I want to say that organization helped me a lot to feel my freedom, the significance of my world, the volume of my life, and also find the right people with whom I sought to take explain. I believe that it's very important to hold such a meeting with migrants and talk to them about their rights, their meaning, and their freedom. And they will be not afraid to talk about that, talk about their problems and fears because they have lived all their lives in the place where no one heard their voice, where their cry was deep in silence. Therefore, it's very important that the state where women, migrants come, feeling from place where they are oppressed and humiliated. I'm sorry. Tell them about all this. Tell they have a voice and freedom. It's as far I understand, the who come here and understand who come here still have isolation and silence because they're scared because they don't know how to start and how to talk about it with who talk about them. So we just want to be appreciated a little more than the chicken in chicken coop. Uh, we just wanted that will be see people in us, not a scary beaten animal who blatantly lie looking in your eyes when you ask her, are you okay? They always tell you, I'm okay, because it's to shine, because everyone in their country tell me it's to shine, talk about your problem, but it's not problem about religion. It's problem about tradition, stupid tradition, and bad people. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I participated in the workshop with European Network of Migrant Women, and it was the most life-changing experience I had until now. The thing that really made a difference for me was the safe space created for us. From day one, we started to build this bond that made us feel comfortable just to be ourselves, to speak our truth, to be vulnerable. And 1 week later, I was crying my eyes out in the middle of an activity in front of this women that I had just met. And I thought I screwed everything over, but I've never felt so seen before, so welcomed, because that in fact, there were no facilitators and participants. We were only one group of migrant women all together sharing our experiences, and that validated everything for me. Before this workshop, I wasn't even sure if I could call myself a migrant woman. And now I feel ready to speak up and to hear other women, to work with them, to engage in the fight for our rights. And for that, I'll be forever grateful. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, ladies. We have I beg your pardon. We have a question from our audience. Whoops.
Would you like me to read it? Okay, got it.
Yeah. To whom will you give your research results? Are you currently of the impression that these results will be well received? Interesting. How might any recommendations be implemented? That is, what organizations are most able to put your recommendations into effect? Would you like to tackle that one? Would you ladies like to take that on? Both teams.
The European Network of Migrant Women, what we do also for our members is to do capacity building for them as organizations, because there's more organizations working on the ground. So with this report and toolkit that we created with the Sciences Po team, we also want to train them in order to reproduce the methodology we used for the workshops with young migrant women in which Analu and Fatima participated, so that this can be reproduced all across Europe with young migrant women to empower them to be active political citizens in their host countries. And then we're also going to share these recommendations with the CEDAW committee and at European level with all our European partners with whom we're working. I don't know if the Sciences Po team maybe wants to complete or to add something.
I might just add something for the last part of the question regarding the organizations that are most able to put the recommendations into effect. We decided to divide our recommendations in 4 levels of governance. And these 4 levels are the European and national and international levels of governance regarding governments itself. Then we have a second level of governance or of action, which would be the private NGOs and associations. The third one is civil society organizations and grassroots associations. And we were mindful of the fact that each different level of action needed to have special recommendations. And we also wanted to keep in mind the fact that they have different infrastructures and different means of doing so. So I don't know if that answers your question, but thank you very much for asking it.
Thank you. Thank you for tackling that question.
Avatar Meher Baba once said, "Art, when inspired with love, leads to higher realms. Love art, and that art will open for you the inner life." Today, I would like to introduce our 2 featured artists. Joining us first is painter Hannah Rose Thomas, who uses art as a tool for advocacy, giving voice
Thank
to
you,
the
Leslie.
voiceless
It's
and
an honor
bringing
to
their
be with you
stories
all
into
today.
places of influence in the
I will
global
just share
north.
my screen so that you can see some of
Directly
the
following
paintings
Ms.
and the art
Thomas
projects.
will be
Here we
award-winning
go.
Iraqi-American poet
So
Dunya Mikhail,
I am delighted to be
who
here
uses
with you all
forms
today.
such as
Thank you very much,
reportage,
Wesley
fable,
and
and
Gloria,
lyric
for kindly
to
inviting
address
me.
themes of
And I
war,
thought I'd share
exile,
briefly with you a few
loss,
of the
and
stories
love.
of the courageous
But
women,
first, Hannah
survivors of
Rose, the
displacement
floor
and
is
sexual
yours.
violence, whose portraits I've had the honor of painting. So I've had the honor of working with Syrian refugees in Jordan, organizing art projects, and Yazidi women who escaped ISIS captivity in Iraqi Kurdistan, Rohingya refugees in Bangladeshi camps, and survivors of Boko Haram in northern Nigeria. For the art projects in Iraqi Kurdistan and Nigeria, I taught the women how to paint their self-portraits as a way to share their stories with the rest of the world. For many, it was the first time in their lives that they had ever painted before. The art projects created a safe space for the women to share their stories. Telling our stories helps individuals to integrate their traumatic memories, gradually begin to heal, and reclaim their dignity. However, language is often inadequate to convey the experiences of trauma and conflict. However, the arts can help unlock this process and give a new form of communication to address the silence and unspeakable pain. Many survivors of unspeakable violence experience a profound sense of powerlessness, an overwhelming and deeply rooted feeling that they do not have a voice. Thus, one of the primary needs of survivors is to feel like a person again, to rediscover their own sense of personhood and voice. The hope was that these art projects would create a safe space that honours the experience and the women's stories, and therefore enable a restoration of dignity. So in August 2017, I travelled to Iraqi Kurdistan for an art project with a group of Yazidi women who had escaped ISIS captivity. It was the 3rd anniversary of the genocide and the fall of Sinjar into the hands of ISIS. Many of the women chose to paint self-portraits of themselves in Yazidi traditional dress, of white robes. This expression of identity is especially important considering the dehumanization that they experienced. One of the Yazidi women who took part in the project, named Hadiya, who was my age at the time, only 26 years old, had been sold to 12 different men during her time in captivity. One young mother named Basse painted this haunting image of an ISIS soldier separating her from her 6-year-old daughter. She said, They took her out of my hands and put her into the hands of the enemy. Every day and night I imagine what Daesh are doing to her. Sabasi escaped, but her daughter did not. During our time together, the women asked whether I would also paint their portraits. It felt an incredible privilege to be trusted to share their stories in this way. The use of gold leaf and early Renaissance painting techniques are reminiscent of icon paintings, a reminder of these women's inherent dignity and their secret value. I hope to capture something of their strength, dignity, and resilience to show that they have not been defined by what they have suffered. Then in September 2018, I traveled to northern Nigeria for an art project, part of an Open Doors trauma healing program for a group of Christian women who were all survivors of sexual violence, either at the hands of militant Fulani herdsmen or the Islamic extremist group, Boko Haram. Each of the women who took part in the project had a heart-rending story. The hope was to create a safe space for them to be seen, heard, and accepted and begin to process their trauma. By the end of the project, each of the women had created a powerful self-portrait, for the finishing touch sewing vibrant Nigerian fabric onto their designs. And like the Yazidi women, they also chose to paint glistening tears of gold. One young woman named Charity, who had been kidnapped by Boko Haram and held captive for 3 years, said, "I can recount 3 different times that I was beaten by my husband because I came back with a child. I told him I haven't done it of my own will. I was forced and there was nothing I could do." Her pain was magnified when her husband beat her and rejected her beautiful daughter, Rahila. And every day she faces abuse and isolation within her community because of the stigma around sexual violence. Conflict leaves many wounds, but perhaps the biggest of all is the stigma that so many survivors like Charity face. This additional burden following devastating assaults is almost too painful to contemplate. But on our last day of the project together, Charity said, "I am so happy. I have never held a pencil in my life before, and this is the first time I've been able to write my name and even to draw my face." So these projects were but a drop in the ocean when I think of the trauma that the women have faced. Nevertheless, the simple process of painting their portraits helped the women to find their voice, to know their worth and affirm a sense of their identity. The women said that sharing their stories together helped them to realize for the first time that they were not to blame and did not need to be ashamed. For as Desmond Tutu explains, it is our shared humanity, our shared losses, and our shared grief that ultimately allow us to reconnect again with the world around us. We are harmed together and we are healed together. The purpose of these projects was twofold. It was both therapeutic and as a tool for advocacy, to empower the women's voices to be heard in places of influence in the global north, such as the House of Parliament in Buckingham Palace and the UN, through their self-portraits and my portrait paintings. For all too often, their stories of suffering go unseen and unheard. I believe that the arts can bring healing and restoration. They can create a space of hospitality to attend to and bear witness to the unspeakable suffering of another. The French philosopher Simone Weil affirms that the capacity to give one's attention to a sufferer is a very rare and difficult thing. It is almost a miracle. Indeed, she writes, it is a miracle, for this restores them to their humanity. Can the arts create that space necessary to attend to the unspeakable suffering of another? I believe that there is nothing more valuable that we can give to one another than the full recognition of his or her humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah Rose. I am really moved by your presentation. My name is Dunya Mikhail, and by the way, I've met some of the Yazidi women also, and their stories of captivity made me think of a particular language symbol that we have in Arabic. It's called the Tayid circle, the Ta marbuta in Arabic, which is a feminine sign. So I read this poem titled The Stranger in Her Feminine Sign. Everything has gender in Arabic. History is male. Fiction is female. Dream is male. Wish is female. Feminine words are followed by a circle with 2 dots over it. They call this symbol the Tayid circle, knotted with wishes, which come true only when forgotten or replaced by the wishes of others. In the town of Tayid wishes, people feel great anticipation because a stranger will arrive today in her feminine sign. Someone says he saw her 2 dots glittering, refuting another's vision of a cat's eyes hunting in darkness. So scary, he says, how the moon hides in her red circle. Everyone is busy today, listing wishes on pieces of paper they'll give to the wind. When the stranger finds them on her way, she'll collect them and adorn them to her circle, tossing off some old wishes to make space for the new. They say the dropped ones will come true. The stranger's lateness worries those who wait. Someone says she's searching for a word to complete a special sentence, the gift she'll bring to town. Another wonders if she seeks a verb or a noun and offers to find her. A third warns that the stranger may turn him with one touch into a flower that blooms for only an instant before it withers and dies, her circle throbbing with songs that cause sadness and elation, and something so obscure, no one has a name for it. Will she complete a verb or a noun phrase, or go
Thank you,
solo, a
Dunya, for that
word
beautiful
complete
poem.
on
We
its
really
own,
appreciate
they
your
wonder.
participation today.
When they
Hannah
finally hear
Rose, we actually have a
footsteps,
question for
they
you
know
from
the
the
stranger must be
audience.
near.
We've been
Make sure the
asked,
gate
may
is
I ask,
open.
please,
They
how
remind one
long
another.
have you been doing this
They hear
work?
clinking,
How many
a
funders have
bracelet,
contributed? And
a
how, please,
chain.
did you realize this would be so helpful to these women?
Thank you.
Well, I first had the opportunity to organise art projects among refugee communities while I was living as an Arabic student in Jordan. And I worked with UNHCR with groups of Syrian refugees. We transformed UN refugee tents into works of art, and which these tents then travelled around the world in order to raise awareness for the plight of the Syrian refugee community. And at that time, I began painting portraits of some of the refugees that I'd had the privilege of meeting. And I hope to be able to share some of the human stories behind the refugee crisis, behind something which I think in the news we just get overwhelmed by statistics. I wanted to very much show the human face and some of the stories behind the refugee crisis, which was quite overwhelming at the time, to be sure. My eyes were opened to the extent of the refugee crisis at that time and the potential of the arts, both in bringing healing, but also in advocacy. And that then led on for me to the project with Yazidi women was actually crowdfunded with a small NGO based in the Isle of Wight, and lots of grannies knitted hats to be able to and sold those to be able to for me to be able to travel to Iraqi Kurdistan with a clinical psychologist to work with a local NGO with the Yazidi women. And then another NGO, BRAC, sponsored me to go to Bangladesh to work with Rohingya women and the Rohingya refugee community there. And then in northern Nigeria, it was with Open Doors. But I very much struggled to get funding to be able to continue this work. As I think with the arts, it's quite difficult to tangibly prove the impact that it can have. As much as I'm you witness it and you witness the power of the work. It's more difficult to quantify, and so it's difficult for funders to therefore justify giving funding for this work. So it's something I've struggled to actually get funding to continue or to be able to do more of this work. So it's, yeah, well, it's a work in progress, but I think it's an area it's increasing in opportunity and recognition of the role of and the potential of the arts in these spaces, which is exciting. So it feels quite pioneering, and other artists are working in this space increasingly. So hopefully there'll be increasing recognition in the years to come, and opportunity for others to be involved in this work. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think you did a wonderful job. Thank you. We actually have one more quick question for you. One of our audience members said that all of your artwork is inspiring. How did the women respond to your paintings of them?
So the paintings I actually did when I returned home. So I did the paintings after I came back from the projects with the women, but I was able to, through the NGOs, to send images or send copies of the paintings even as well for the women each to have one. So I wasn't in person to hear how they responded or what they thought of them, which I would have loved to have been able to witness that. But it's been a real privilege to be able to share with the women through these NGOs where the paintings have been shown. So when they were shown in the House of Parliament or Buckingham Palace or Lambeth Palace and other places like these, I didn't just go there and then forget about them, that I've tried to do what I promised to advocate on their behalf and enable their stories to be shown, heard in these places. So I hope that would be, a source of encouragement for them. I wish I could go back, though. I would love that. Hopefully there would be an opportunity in the post-pandemic world. I would love that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a real pleasure to have both Dunya and Hannah Rose with us. So thank you, ladies, very much.
Thank you, Wesley.
Ambassador Wilkinson.
Thank you so much, Dunya and Hannah Rose. Your presentations were as beautiful as they were inspiring as they were beautiful. And thank you too to the Sciences Po team. The way you presented, the way you shared the poem was the embodiment of one of our key messages, and we really appreciated the work and the thought that you put into your presentation. It is now my pleasure to introduce Sally Bingham. Blending a life of poetry, activism, and philanthropy, Ms. Bingham will share her poetry of giving. Ms. Bingham?
Thank you so much. I'm delighted and honored to be here and to be a part of this very important occasion. I have been a writer since I was a child. So I have too much to say about that, and I will limit myself a little bit to what I think is appropriate for this particular presentation. As a writer, I don't create propaganda. No matter what form I choose, I must be sure to avoid preaching. This is especially difficult now when, like all artists, I feel a powerful need to be useful in the fight for social justice. But my writing can only address these painful and powerful issues indirectly. For example, a short story from a recent collection of mine called Red Car is a short story titled Doing Good. It tells of a rich woman's decision to help a 14-year-old girl who has been raped by her father to pay for an abortion, even though the woman realizes, and this is a quote, "If I provide money for this operation, I'll have to be responsible for everything that happens to her afterwards." This is not an endorsement of a political opinion. It's an artist's way of providing the situation and the character and leaving the reader to draw her own conclusion. The artist's life, excuse me? The artist's life is not and cannot be easy. And this is only one of the questions I face today. Most writers are marginalized and ignored because publishing companies in the US are run by corporations, and the only books that reliably sell are written by celebrities in other fields. This brings me to the artist as activist. The philanthropist is by necessity an activist, but there are real problems in this situation. I feel that my writing, short stories, novels, poems, plays, memoirs, and a biography are my most powerful and effective form of activism. This is especially true of my recent biography of a major 20th century US philanthropist named Doris Duke. It's called The Silver Swan. Doris used her inherited money to found one of the biggest charitable foundations in the US, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, with an endowment of $1.3 billion. It makes grants to help children, to preserve the environment, and to support modern dance. Doris Duke, the founder, stepped outside of her comfort zone, especially to support Margaret Sanger in the founding of Planned Parenthood 100 years ago, and Louise Duncan, an African-American dancer. In this, Doris set a model for what I call transformation philanthropy. Unfortunately, I know of no other examples today. Like the big corporations on which charitable foundations are modeled, they are controlled in the US by boards made up of well-off white men, the social and political acquaintances who are comfortable with each other, and the foundation executives largely follow the wishes of these boards in financing primarily white arts groups, libraries, hospitals, and elite universities. These large sums of money rarely reach the marginalized and have little or no effect on social change or economic justice. This must change if philanthropy is going to do more than to support the status quo. But for that to happen, the boards and the executives of these US foundations need to recognize the modern world that they are operating in and to include people with whom they may not be comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bingham, for sharing your groundbreaking thinking with us. Our next group of presentations is on the topic Gender Equity in Sustainable Systems. First, we will hear from the Cornell University College of Agriculture and Life Sciences
so early
team member,
that the dew is still making
Louise
shoes wet
Erskine,
and the light
with
is
her
more blue
presentation
than it is
titled
yellow.
More Than
On this
Soil,
particular dairy farm in
Seeds,
the United
and Water.
States, the only
She will be
female
followed by
farm
Adele
worker works early in the morning
Deputy
and late at night.
CEO of the
Today we will
Sustainable
call her
Food Trust,
Adriana,
the
but
partner
know that we've changed her
organization for
identity
which the
for
Cornell
purposes of
team
safety and
provided their
economic
recommendations.
security.
Louise, the
Most
floor is
heads are
yours.
still on pillows in this part of the world. But the work schedule of the dozen or so workers on this farm are shaped around the milkings, not the 9 to 5. Adriana washes floors, checks to see which cows are ready to be inseminated, and kisses the calves as she leaves after her short morning shift. She doesn't work as long as the men on the farm because her boss doesn't think that she's strong enough to work directly with the cattle. Her hours keep getting cut, so she's found another job at a nearby restaurant. Adriana is undocumented, which means she's in the US without permission from the government. She's here to raise money for her family in Mexico, but while she produces food to be bought and sold in the fluorescently lit mega grocer in the town over, she experiences really awful discrimination. Discrimination on farms in North America is not unique to Adriana or her farm. Farm women, or as some call them, farmers' wives, also struggle for recognition and representation in their industry. From those whose names are on the land title, to extra caregiving work, or limited resources for victims of violence, it's easy to see that those who produce our food are not treated equal. Ideas and histories of race, gender, and labor are central, not peripheral, to how farms are organized. So equity, migrant workers, and farmers of color need to be at the core of the future that includes fair farming. In new economic theory, there's an idea called nudging that asks, how can we make the right choice the easy choice? Up until now, not valuing the work that women do on farms has been easy. Just like polluting waterways near farm fields was easy, or constantly working fields until they're smoothed of their irregularities was easy. There is so often no economic incentive to make the right choice. True cost accounting makes the right choice obvious to farmers. It's a way of valuing and then adding up all of the good and bad that certain practices create. The Sustainable Food Trust developed a survey with 11 categories that show farmers how to make the right choices and what impacts their current choices have on the world around us. But you and I know that farms are more than soil, seeds, and water. So our team at Cornell University transformed the categories called human capital and social capital to make sure that farms do everything they can to value the work of women and racialized people within their farm gates. Our gender and racial equity survey consists of 38 questions, was tested with farmers and farm workers in Canada and the United States, and when integrated into the final tool, will also offer specific changes that can be made on farms that will promise sustainability and equity. In a farming family, wives are often asked to take on the extra work. So we asked women how they spend their days. How many hours per week do you spend caring for children, working an extra job, or tackling farm administration tasks? Do you have time each week for community activities? We developed 3 goals for gender equity: recognition of my work, the redistribution of resources in the workload, and representation in community structures and on official documents. We ask farm workers, 60% of whom are people of color, whether or not they have adequate healthcare coverage, the right to unionize, or whether or not they trust their employers to support them with immigration documents, or if they have someone to turn to about harassment. We developed 3 pillars for realizing racial equity: ownership, opportunity, and openness. For Adriana, this may be the chance to own a small part of the farm that she works on. Research shows that transitioning farm workers to partial ownership or tenantship raises social and human capital throughout their community. Opportunities like leadership positions can do that too. And openness means freedom for Adriana to work in a language that she's comfortable using or comfortable suggesting new production ideas. Our report calls for more than just a few tweaks. So much of the discrimination that women, farm workers, and farmers face is systemic or structural. It's created by histories of colonialism, centuries of assumptions about naturalized ability, or past financial barriers. While not all of the inequalities will be solved inside of a farm gate, true cost accounting makes it easier for producers, consumers, and policymakers to understand what it takes to make the right choice. This report calls for the total implementation of gender and racial equity accounting on all farms that measure sustainability. The team of researchers at Cornell University also knows that this is just the beginning of true cost accounting in our food system. We encourage Sustainable Food Trust to continue testing the tool in different regions around the world and advocating at a national and international level for this tool to be recognized as the harmonized framework each and every farm uses.
You have 1 minute.
The food waiting for us in our fridge has seen a lifetime of stories before it reaches our hands. It's been touched by the Adrianas of the world and the mothers of the world, who are the farmers of the world. To raise up their voices and to offer a vision for a future where farms are spaces of empowerment, that was our task. To Sustainable Food Trust and Women Forward International, we offer immense thanks for that opportunity. I'll now hand over the mic to Deputy CEO of Sustainable Food Trust, Adele Jones.
Thank you, Louise. And yes, I'm Adele Jones, Deputy CEO of the Sustainable Food Trust, and we are a UK-based charity, but work internationally to accelerate the transition towards more sustainable food and farming systems all over the world. And Louise has just done the most wonderful job in telling the story of this incredibly important piece of work, which has been supported by Women Forward International over the last year. And as Louise mentioned, these social and human capital categories that she has been working to improve with the team at Cornell form a really important part of what we're referring to as the Global Farm Metric, which is an internationally common framework for measuring the impact of food and farming on the ground, on the farm. And what the Global Farm Metric does is take equal account of the environmental, social, and economic aspects of farming. Because if we don't consider farming through the lens of those three pillars, we will not be able to introduce the right incentives, and in some cases disincentives, to move all farmers to be part of the climate change, nature, and public health, community, and social equity solution. And again, as Louise mentioned, if we don't make these types of farming systems the no-brainer business case for every farmer across the world to follow, we won't see the change that we need to at the scale and pace which is now necessary. And so we have to introduce what we refer to as true cost accounting, which looks at the impact of agriculture that is not currently monetized, for example, soil health, water quality, air quality, and of course, gender and social equity. We need to start valuing those things that farmers provide so we can start shifting the business case for sustainable production in that way of towards being a climate change, nature, and social equity solution. And that's why I think farming is one of the most exciting industries to be working in at the moment, because it does have the potential to, in my mind, be the biggest solution to some of the problems we're now facing in this world of climate change and huge social inequality. So I just want to say again to Louise and the team at Cornell, thank you so much. We are very much looking forward to taking your recommendations on board and integrating those into the Global Farm Metric framework. And thank you again to Women Forward International. And I really hope that with both parties, this is just the start of a longer journey and partnerships together. So thank you very much. And thank you for all the presentations today. They've been really fascinating.
Thank you very much, Adele and Louise. We had a question from the audience that just came in, and it's actually addressed to Ms. Sally Bingham, but it also applies to this idea of addressing leadership inequities in the farming industry. So I'm going to pose it to Ms. Bingham and also let it be a part of the theme of our overall discussion. The question is, amazing. Thank you for such a great quote. Please, could you share more about how organizations can invite more diverse groups to be leaders in their organizations?
Thank you. I think the only real solution is the dismantling of patriarchy. But since, as we all know, this is going to be a century-long struggle, I will try to be more specific. In the case of the Kentucky Foundation for Women, which I founded 30 years ago in Kentucky, the real solution that we have found so far is in the choice of the executive director. We have had 4 to date. I was the first. I'm no longer involved. But the other 3 women have not represented the elite white upper class. One of them is a working artist. One of them is a social activist in the cause of criminal justice. And the other is a longtime organizer of women's groups. They have assembled boards that represent the diverse people of Kentucky, including women of color. We don't have a Native American population, but we have a large population of women of color who have been discriminated against over the centuries. Also, women who don't claim the traditional gender roles, that's very important, and women whose backgrounds may have been truly impoverished. That raises particular problems for charitable foundations, because if you come from extreme poverty and you've seen its effects on your family and on other women, it may be hard to justify making grants to women who are artists. You don't immediately see the impact on issues of social justice. That again is a long-term proposition. I have always felt that the arts are able to reach people where various lecturing and books do not, because the arts, if they are effective, can burrow underneath prejudice and produce a new point of view. I think we've been quite effective over 30 years. It being Kentucky, which is a very poor state, we've been able to make grants of something like $2,000 to an individual woman, which may actually make a lot of difference in terms, for instance, of being able to hire a babysitter in order to work, in order to travel to a conference, to network. These relatively small amounts of money in a poor state can make a great deal of difference. I hope that's helpful. It's an extremely important question.
Thank you very much, Sally Bingham. I'm going to turn the floor back over to Ambassador Wilkinson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Bingham. Our next presentation is from the Yale University Jackson Institute for Global Affairs team. Their presentation is titled Growing the Coffee and Cocoa Sector Through Equity for Women Farmers. Their presentation will be followed by Kimberly Eason, the founder and CEO of the Partnership for Gender Equity, the partner organization for which the students provided their recommendations. Yale team, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. Gender equity and strategies for gender inclusion are key to getting smallholder farmers out of poverty. As we interviewed coffee and cocoa extension and advisory service providers this semester, our research team, working with the Partnership for Gender Equity, found that respondents like this one identified various challenges and opportunities to transform the coffee and cocoa sectors through a journey towards gender equitable programming. Our 4-woman research team from Yale University's Jackson Institute for Global Affairs conducted desk research and interviews with coffee and cocoa stakeholders, focusing on 22 extension and advisory service providers, or EAS providers. Our research highlighted themes, challenges, and best practices with respect to gender equity, integration, and inclusion, as well as recommendations for how a third party can support service providers and how the industry can strengthen its gender equitable practices overall. Our research complements PGE's work of creating tools and methodologies to strengthen the coffee and cocoa industry's investment in gender equity across the value chain. We hope that our research will help propel the industry forward on the journey towards gender equity. Most coffee around the world is grown on smallholder farms. Nearly half of the labor on these farms is provided by women whose efforts go widely unrecognized. Their work is systematically under-resourced and their voices are left out. Leading companies and development organizations have invested in the economic, environmental, and social sustainability of smallholder farmers. Yet more attention must be given to what so far has been the invisible role played by women in these communities. Throughout our research, we found several key challenges common across service providers that limit the effective incorporation of gender equity integration into their programs and exacerbate inequalities. Almost all service providers acknowledge the importance of women in coffee and cocoa production and their current marginalization in the industry. However, gender equity is not often part of providers' overall strategies, and rather is simply one component of a sustainability strategy. Strategies for gender equity have largely been reactive, implemented in response to the demands of consumers in a market that increasingly values sustainability, resulting in ad hoc and inconsistent gender programming. While providers may prioritize gender programming for specific projects, gender is almost never highlighted as a key priority across all services or sectors. And many EAS providers are unable to enact a robust monitoring system that includes gender equitable indicators, so they lack the ability to measure their impact on gender outcomes.
In addition to leveraging partnerships, engaging meaningfully with the community, and prioritizing gender equity work both internally and externally, our team urges coffee and cocoa service providers to incorporate the following recommendations to push the industry forward on themes of gender equity. In order to establish a foundation for gender equitable programming and increase accountability, service providers should articulate a cross-sectoral gender strategy as well as context-sensitive strategies. They should clearly and comprehensively communicate ongoing gender work and goals and develop a systematized monitoring and evaluation and learning approach, utilizing gender disaggregated data consistently. In order to effectively implement gender equitable programming, service providers must deliver gender sensitive trainings for both staff and producers, implement action plans to address gender disparities rather than simply observing these disparities, and develop an agile feedback loop among staff and between staff and beneficiaries. We call on the industry to mainstream gender equity. It must make gender work a priority that is woven into and measured in all aspects of programming, committing to knowledge sharing practices and reevaluating current programming to embed gender equity goals from the bottom up. So, what will it take to transform the coffee and cocoa sectors? The industry's most pressing challenges must be recognized and addressed, and key stakeholders must motivate service providers to embed gender transformative practices into their operations and programs. Our research has confirmed there is growing interest and ample opportunity to improve resilience for millions of farming women and their families, increase accountability and return on investment for businesses, and strengthen the sustainability of the sector overall. We're so grateful to have gone on this journey of discovery. I'd now like to turn it over to Kimberly Eason, founder and CEO of the Partnership for Gender Equity, for some thoughts on PGE's mission and work and the journey towards gender equity.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are one global family, and in the spirit of breaking down the walls and building bridges, I want to take us on a short gender equity journey in 5 haiku. The coffee and cocoa sectors are broad, vast, complex. They're worth billions of dollars globally. Roasters and brands, our customers care about women and children. Our partners must act. For service providers working in coffee and cocoa producing countries, traditions ingrained impede our best intentions. Tools will help guide us. For the Partnership for Gender Equity, our vision is vast. Collaboration is key. The time is here now. Farming women, no longer hidden. Voices and talents cherished. We thrive together. And for dear Mother Earth, nature loves and heals. Our global journey unfolds. We cherish the world. With deep, profound gratitude for the Yale Student Research Team, the Jackson Institute for Global Affairs, Women Forward International, and UNITAR. This research is an important, critical step on this journey towards greater gender equity in the coffee and cocoa sectors. It provides a foundation for the tools that the Partnership for Gender Equity is creating. We are a women-led, not-for-profit social enterprise. We're working globally to elevate the voice and visibility of farming women, their families in the coffee and cocoa sector. We do this through research, tools, and advocacy for change. What we're doing is supporting everyone in these massive global sectors to embark on a journey towards greater gender equity and to be successful at it. The tool that we're creating, at which this research really helps to underpin and build credibility for, is a diagnostic tool for companies that provide services on the ground to farmers. We want to support these organizations to understand where they are and where they want to go, and then help them get on that journey using a shared language for understanding, advocacy, and action. What we're doing next, hopefully continuing our work with Women Forward International and Yale, is to validate the tool, to make sure that it's fit for purpose regionally and really addresses the diversity of women's issues and needs, and making sure that services not only reach women, which they mostly don't, but also benefit and empower women. Our vision in 2025 is that we can stand up in front of the UN, looking at our impact towards SDG 5, together with representatives globally, women farmers, their families, industry members, really demonstrating our progress and success towards achieving gender equality in the coffee and cocoa sectors, and using what we've done as an example for what other sectors can do as well. We are one global family. It is time for farming women and their families to be fully recognized and supported at the heart of the global and coffee sectors. We look forward to continuing our work with Women Forward International, with UNITAR, and with Yale, and with all of you to break down these walls of ignorance, building common languages, common bridges to collaboration in services of minds and hearts, and farming women and their families around the world. We are truly stronger together with gender equity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the Yale team and also to Kimberly. We truly are stronger together. So our final student presentation today is from the Stanford University Community Health and Prevention Research Program team. Their presentation is titled, All of Us Taking Care of All of Us, Food Rescue for Senior Women in the United States. They will be followed by Eve Burge, Executive Director of the White Pony Express. Take it away, Stanford team.
In selfless service, the comfort of others is our convenience, their health, our own healing, their happiness, our delight. Giving one's life for others, one gains more life for oneself. Sheltering others in one's heart makes one inhabit theirs. An act of helpfulness, a word of comfort, the spontaneous warmth of selfless love gives to others what they greatly need. Hi everyone, I'm Naz, and my partner Komal and I are students in the Community Health and Prevention Research Program at Stanford, and today we'll be talking about the impact study we've been conducting alongside White Pony Express. COVID-19 has presented challenges for all age groups, with older adults, especially women, being disproportionately affected as some of the most vulnerable people in our society. Every month, Medicare spends about $134 more for each socially isolated older adult than it would if the person were connected. The pandemic may have exacerbated these issues in ways that have not yet been fully understood. Further, food insecurity among low-income seniors is a rampant problem, with 2.9 million households of seniors living with food insecurity. In just 7 years, White Pony Express's Circle of Giving model has delivered over 15 million pounds of nutritious, fresh food that would otherwise have gone to waste. While these numbers are impressive, few studies have characterized the impact of food rescue programs such as White Pony Express. The first main goal of this research is to study the impact of COVID-19 on isolation, mental health, and well-being in the low-income senior population. We decided to study both men and women in order to see if women were impacted by the pandemic differently. The second main goal is to assess the impact of White Pony Express's food deliveries on low-income seniors, as food insecurity and mental health are found to be closely related. One of White Pony Express's main goals is to develop more elaborate quantitative and qualitative metrics to assess their impact on various populations. So we're also reviewing the potential role that food rescue organizations overall can play in lowering the burden of food insecurity and improving both mental and physical health.
In order to answer these questions, we've been conducting a study that has two main parts, a survey component and an interview component. The survey is where the bulk of our data is coming from, so I'll talk about that first. It's essentially a 6-page printed questionnaire that asks about a few key domains: mental health, physical health, nutrition, social connectedness, food insecurity, and the impact of White Pony Express. With the help of a White Pony Express volunteer, we distributed these surveys to around 300 low-income senior residents in the Bay Area. The interview component consisted of a subset of seniors who contacted us wanting to have a more in-depth conversation regarding the survey. In this semi-structured conversation, we asked participants to elaborate on their personal experience with COVID-19 and any barriers that they faced, as well as any resources or support they wish they had received during this past year. So just so you guys can see, here's what one page of the survey looked like. Most of the pages look like this. There are mostly rating questions for what life was like before the pandemic, what life is like now, with a couple of open-ended questions. We tried to include helpful images and tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. The survey was completely anonymous with both English and Spanish versions, and it was approved by the IRB prior to dissemination. Just wanted to touch on current progress since the study is still ongoing. So as of last week, we have completed the data collection of the study, and we're just about to begin survey analysis. In total, we have around 100 responses, which is awesome. We're still conducting a few remaining interviews, but plan to spend June analyzing the data from both the survey and the interviews. We plan to disseminate our findings to White Pony Express and Women Forward International by late August. So since we've conducted a couple of interviews so far, we just wanted to share some quotes that we thought were interesting. Here are some quotes that kind of highlight the challenges of COVID. So my whole life has changed. It's really strange. Being alone was hard with no one to talk to. I didn't have any food, no contact with friends, worrying about if I'll get sick. Then we had some quotes about hope and positivity. I am hopeful. I am so much stronger and have a more positive attitude. Living with something new was difficult, but I had good support from my church, my family, and my friends.
The results of our study can help highlight particular challenges that seniors, and specifically senior women, are facing in the light of the COVID pandemic, and identify areas to improve for enhanced mental health, physical health, and well-being. The findings can also help inform other food delivery services and food rescue organizations in reducing food insecurity burden in the long term. We're so excited to see what we find. We feel very lucky to have access to studying such an amazing population through White Pony Express. And now we will be passing it on to Eve Burge from White Pony Express to talk more about the program.
Thank you so much. I hope I can be heard. So I want to just first extend my deepest, most heartfelt thanks to Women Forward International for introducing White Pony Express to Naz and Coco, two phenomenal powerhouse women who lead with their hearts. The love and passion that they brought to this work, really, those are the two ingredients that made it so successful and that I believe made the engagement from our low-income senior population so surprisingly strong. At White Pony Express, we are in a constant state of change, in a constant state of maturation and learning. And the organization itself is built to pivot on the needs of our community members. So studies like this are just critically important. This one focused on low-income, isolated senior women, a population that is particularly important to our organization, is going to inform our next steps. And so we constantly find that we have to be doing the outreach, getting this information, and thanks to Women Forward International, we now have vehicles to help us with our important next steps. The study is letting us know what brings the women joy, and most importantly, how we can more deeply serve them. The art at White Pony Express, I believe, is expressed through our loving. We know that we're all part of one human family, and that when one of us moves forward, everyone moves forward. From our very first day, Dr. Connor has stressed that more important than the food and the clothing that we deliver is the love that we share. He conceived White Pony Express as a model to eliminate hunger and poverty by delivering the abundance all around us to our neighbors in great need, and to do this with love. We're connectors, and we feel so fortunate to be connected to this vast tapestry of women leaders. So I thank you very much for having us and for this privileged opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Eve, and thank you to the Stanford team. We will hear an expert panel respond to the Stanford, Yale, and Cornell team presentations. But first, we have a very special guest speaker, Latanya Mapp Frett, President of the Global Fund for Women. Her talk, Holding Ourselves Accountable to Gender Justice Movements, aligns with our theme of what it truly means to walk in the vanguard through our global programs.
Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you so much for the invitation for this Vanguard event. It's been so interesting listening to all of your programs and your projects. Again, I'm Latanya Mapp Frett, and I'm the president and CEO of Global Fund for Women, which is based here in San Francisco, but does its work primarily in the Global South. We support gender justice movements that transform power and privilege for a few into equity and equality for all. I started off as a human rights attorney when my career started almost 3 decades ago. I worked in legal aid in numerous countries around the world and landed a great job at the NAACP before I realized that I really wanted to work and challenge the intersectional inequalities that we were finding around the world. So it wasn't just racial justice, but racial justice and gender justice, and racial justice, gender justice, and climate justice. And, you know, the list goes on, but how important it was to be able to address the most marginalized of our communities as we went about our work. And so as I take this journey with Global Fund for Women, I'm going into my 2nd year of work that really centers grassroots movements. Let me talk a little bit about the data behind this strategy. Research is showing that broad-based social movements are one of the most effective ways to create and sustain a long-term social transformation. And so over the past 50 years, we've seen women's movements lead on more equal land rights, on better access to financial institutions, expanding legal protections, and protection from sexual harassment. And today, women and girls are mobilizing in revolutionary ways against harassment, discrimination, and violence. From Black Lives Matter to the Red Umbrella Movement, to Me Too, to Ni Una Menos, from Lebanon to Sudan, Iraq to Chile, people around the world really are demanding a more equal world through movement building, and feminists are right there on the front lines. And these movements are both online and offline, and they're building broad-based and intersectional constituencies. One thing is, though, these movements do need funding and resources to strengthen and sustain their powerful grassroots organizing. And often it's the same multifaceted structure that makes them so effective that has made them challenging for donors and allies like us to reach with funds and support. And that's where Global Fund for Women steps in. We try to get funding and other resources to support movements. I'm telling you both how we work and the research behind our work to show the critical link between data and social change on the ground. Research is pivotal to our work. It grounds how we know how to best support grassroots people power. And I applaud you for the research and the work you've done through this program, and hope you continue exploring this field. This moment is such a pivotal time to be entering this work, particularly right now with the UN's Generation Equality Initiative. So I was fortunate and blessed to be at the Beijing conference 26 years ago, which was a rallying point to insist on finally achieving the human rights of all women and girls. That platform of action was ratified by 189 nations, but we are far from fulfilling its promise, actual gender equality. And that's why now UN Women is bringing together the next generation of activists with those who are instrumental on creating the Beijing Platform from Action to push progress through generation equality. So governments, corporations, academia, influencers, and philanthropy will make commitments. And we want to make sure that those commitments are not just lip service, but that we hold everyone who makes a commitment accountable over the next 5 years with actual research and data to show progress. And again, this is the moment. This is our moment. It's our moment to step up. In this time of COVID and the rise of movements like Black Lives Matter, we can all step up by supporting activists and gender justice movements to drive this transformative change and structural change. I want to again congratulate you on the work you've done so far and encourage you to continue this journey, exploring gender justice and equality issues in your organizations and careers. And again, thank you so much for having me here today. It's been a pleasure again to join you. Thank you, and back over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Latanya. I would now like to introduce our final expert panel that will provide their analysis of the presentations addressing gender equity in sustainable systems. Maria Helena Semedo, Deputy Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and Patrick Holden, who is the founder and chief executive of the Sustainable Food Trust. Patrick, would you like to get the ball rolling by perhaps taking the first query that we had? If you could please comment on the value of those 3 projects in light of your own work.
Well, I think I would like to just start by saying that I'm honored and humbled to be providing a few thoughts to this event as a man. And although I'm the founder and the chief executive of the Sustainable Food Trust, my deputy CEO, Adele Jones, just shared the platform. I come from the organization I worked before was called the Soil Association, founded by a woman, Lady Balfour, with a journal called Mother Earth. And it seems to me that more than ever before, now that the male archetypal gender qualities of power and winning and privilege and dominance and suppression, exploitation are being called into question, we need the future of agriculture to be informed by a new set of values which are much more associated with female gender archetypes of empathy and reconciliation and emotional intelligence and love and care and compassion. And I feel that all those qualities have been expressed in every single one of the presentations that you've had today. I salute Women Forward International, and I feel that your influence in the world of agriculture and food is more needed than ever before today.
Thank you, Patrick. Maria Elena?
Thank you, Ambassador, and greetings to my fellow panelists, Patrick. I'm really honored to join you in this panel and to be part of this today event. And thanks for this extremely engaging meeting. I have heard some of the stories, and I must say they have been really inspiring. And all resonate strongly with the mandate of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, that is to put the word hunger and poverty to end and to sustainably manage our natural resources. And this brings us to food. And I would say that food is a connector. The food we eat brings us together as families, as communities, and nations. And it underpins our culture, our economies, and our relationship with nature. Today, we have nearly 690 million people. 9% of the global population go hungry. The COVID-19 pandemic may push another 132 million people to those hands. At the same time, we know that population is growing, income is growing, we have rapid urbanization driving global food demands, and for this, we need to increase the production of food by 60% by 2050. And those challenges are seriously worsened with climate change, which is a major threat to the global agriculture and rural development. If you look worldwide, we have rural and indigenous women and men all involved in agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. And they are struggling to keep up with shifting weather patterns, unpredictable water supplies, constantly having to adapt their production system and to rebuild their resilience. And recognizing this, and the need to deliver progress on all 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is a vision for us to achieve a better world. The United Nations Secretary General has called for a food system summit to trigger global collective action to radically change the way we produce, the way we process, and the way we consume our food. They have all to be sustainable. And in this, gender equality and women economic empowerment are central to agri-food system transformation. We know that women play a major role as agriculture producers, as farm managers, as processors, as trades, wage workers, and entrepreneurs. And I think the examples we have on coffee and cocoa show us the role of women as farm managers and as producers. And if you look at the figures, women comprise over 37% of the world's rural agriculture employment, and almost 50% in low-income countries. In addition, they provide the lion's share of caregiving work for families and households. All of you attending this event don't need to be reminded of the multiple social and economic constraints that rural women face in their daily lives. And it has been already mentioned by the previous panelists. And the gender gap prevents women from becoming equally competitive economic players to create better prospects for themselves, their families, and their communities. And let me just share with you some evidence, and it is overwhelming. 740 million women saw their income fall by 60% during the first month of the pandemic. And the forecasts show that is expected for 2021, that for every one poor man, there will be 18 women in poverty. Look at this ratio. Regarding economic assets, land is a key productive asset and an important collateral for assessing loans. However, women account for less than 15% of agriculture landlords globally. The problem of access to land is really a problem affecting women worldwide. And suddenly, the gender gap in financial inclusion has remained unchanged since 2011, at 7% points globally and about 90% in developing countries. And today, we have heard the testimonials, and I could continue listing data and information, but I think they are evident. The bottom line is that women are most disadvantaged than men in the context of value chain operations due to gender-based inequalities. And this is why we need to build more resilient agri-food system and sustainable rural livelihoods to drive impactful, meaningful change everywhere. And it is imperative to include women at the heart of agri-food systems transformation. This is to make justice to women, and is only including women we can have a better world. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Maria Elena. We have a great question from the audience to both of you. What practical tools, be it technology, education, or craft, can we make available in the era of COVID-19 to give the rural woman the level ground to thrive? Either one.
That was a question for Naz and I, correct?
It's for us, for me.
Oh, for the panelists. Sorry, my bad.
Patrick, you want to start?
Well, I'd just like to comment on what you said first, if I may. I think that it is not just the fact that there has been this terrible gap, and I think as a male of the human species, we need to apologize to the women who have been exploited and undervalued in agriculture throughout the world. I think it's time that we recognize the failure of my gender to provide the right solutions to global agriculture. If we're going to shift to farming and producing food in harmony with nature, we need a new approach, a reconciling approach, a compassionate approach, an approach steered by the emotional intelligence which women can bring. So I feel that the challenge is not just an economic one, important though that is. It is a change of attitude which is necessary. And in relation to the skills, we need to make sure that the skills that we bring in are not merely a continuation of the exploitative approach we have had towards the resources of our planet, which have dominated during my farming lifetime, but skills which are made available to women and men, of course, but particularly women who play such a central role in agriculture and food production throughout the world in a way which enables them to acquire these skills. So I think that it's important for the FAO to recognize these issues and to introduce training and education programs which enable women throughout the world to acquire the skills that are necessary for the new form of agriculture which needs to replace the one we have at the moment. And in relation to the production of food, yes, we do need to produce more food, but you mentioned the 60% growth of food production that is necessary. Perhaps we also need to dramatically reduce food waste and redistribute food in a way that we avoid this terrible situation today where half the world is hungry and the other half is overweight or even obese. So there is an equity issue there, which if we combine that with reducing food waste, it may well be that we are already producing enough food to feed the entire human population if we took into account those two issues.
Great. Maria-Elena, do you have a final comment?
Yes, Patrick, I fully agree with you that we produce enough food. The problem is the access to food. And when we talk about the access to food, the ones who doesn't have access to food are mainly the women. And unfortunately, that's why I said they need to, I agree with you, we need to give them the skills. They have to have access to education. They have to have access to innovation, and they have to have access also to technologies, to market opportunities, and to social protection, and also to be part of the decision-making process. Because I think you refer to that. When we decide with technology, what kind of system, of farming system to move, women, they are not part of the decision-making process. And because of that, they will be excluded. And
yes,
really,
and wrong decisions will be made because women do not have a strong enough voice in these discussions. That's the crucial point.
Exactly. That's why they have to be brought to the table, and they have to be voiced, and their voice have to be heard. And this is also important. And another point which I wanted to bring to the discussion is what are the policies. The government needs to have policies, needs to have the appropriate program, and we need also to have data, because if we don't have data to show us what are the problems, where the women are, we cannot have the good policies. And just to conclude, I said we need to have good data, we need to have voice and leadership to women to ensure that their needs and aspirations are adequately addressed. And we need also to be sure that on the food production, on food security and nutrition policies are all gender responsive. Otherwise, we cannot change the world. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much, Maria Elena. Now I would like to pass the baton to Danya Abdullah to handle the question and answer session. Danya?
Thank you, Ambassador Wilkinson. Thank you, everyone. I'm Danya Abdullah, Women Forward International's Program Officer, and we have a question for the Stanford team and Eve Burge from White Pony Express. And the question is, have you worked out plans already to distribute your results to other food distribution groups that may put them to good use? How do you propose to do this, please?
Sure. Thank you for the question from whoever asked it. So we'll be writing a paper specifically about White Pony Express as a solution to food insecurity among low-income populations, and we plan to publish this paper in a number of different journals. Not exactly sure where we'll be publishing yet, but we'll probably target social science journals and nutrition journals. And we'll be disseminating our results to Women Forward International, as well as White Pony Express and Stanford. We don't have an exact plan for other food organizations and food groups, but that is a really good point. And we'll definitely be working on that over the summer.
I'll just say that on the part of White Pony Express, we have many food rescue partners. And so we'll also share this news. We work with food rescue groups throughout California, and then we've got blossoming partnerships on the East Coast as well.
Thank you. We are now at the conclusion of our event, but let it be only the beginning of a much more exciting journey. Let us leave behind limited views of what is possible. Our global teams have demonstrated that we can come together to find real solutions and dare to walk in the vanguard. Kent?
Thank you, Ambassador Wilkinson, for so graciously hosting us at the Vanguard. Thank you to our keynote speaker, Her Excellency Sheikha Al Mayasa, and the Embassy of the State of Qatar, to our many supporters and advisors, and our Women Forward International team for making our programs possible. Thank you to our students and expert speakers and our audience for being among the vanguard. As Mershida Carol Wayland Connor's citation evokes, the increasing number of individuals who are no longer satisfied with the normal, intellectual, vital, and physical existence of man, but perceive that a greater evolution is the real goal of humanity and attempt to affect it in themselves, to lead others to it, and to make it the recognized goal of the race.
If I had one more day, I would write a love poem composed of one word.
Repeated like binary code. I'll multiply it by the number of days that passed without saying it to you.
And I will add the days when I said it with no words because I want to say it more.
And like a bee gathering pollen, I'll collect everything ever said in one word, like a square root multiplied by the power of 10.
I count even that day when my anger at you or for you turned me into a stone. And also the days when I was away sending my songs like postcards to the lonely, feeling you in every touch of love I gave to the world.
I'll count all my days, even the 9 months of days before I was born, to say this exponential, growing, I love you.